Dearest listeners, Lady Whistledown welcomes you to a tale that begins with a penniless governess seeking nothing more scandalous than honest employment, only to find herself confronted by a proud duke who informs her that the position he wishes her to fill is that of his wife. A single, breath-stealing declaration that shatters her expectations, stirs his long-buried wounds, and entangles them in a bargain neither is prepared to survive. Yet as Christmas snow settles upon Caval estate and its formidable family, one cannot help wondering what dangerous truths, hidden motives, and unspoken desires were set in motion the very moment she crossed his family ancestral threshold. Before we slip any further into this delicious affair, do be sweet and tap the subscribe button and whisper in the comments where in the world you are listening from. Now then, shall we begin? Part 1. The scandal started at Caval House. Yes, that Caval House, where bells clanged, footmen dashed like frantic spectres, and a winter wind howled against the window panes as though demanding entrance. I was not inside myself, of course. One should never imply a lady lurks in ducal hallways. But servants, bless their wonderfully unsealed lips, carried every detail straight to my quill before dawn. Picture it, my listeners. Snow swirling so thick that the lamplight outside appeared as a faint golden smudge. And through that storm trudged Caroline Templeton, a governess of no fortune, little reputation, and an iron spine that London society desperately needs more of. Her boots were soaked. Her gloves were thin, but her determination? Oh, that burned more fiercely than any Caval fireplace. She arrived at the townhouse precisely as the bells tolled 8, her last hope, the poor thing, for she had been refused by more households this week than most ladies attend teas in a season. Yet she still straightened her shoulders before she was admitted, fully expecting an interview about children, lessons, and decorum. What she found instead was him, Duke Anthony Caval, cold, perfect, carved from winter itself. He stood before the roaring fire, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair gleaming like polished mahogany, his expression the sort that freezes lesser mortals in their tracks. Those who know him will not be surprised. His grace collects mysteries the way other men collect mistresses. And no, listeners, before you ask, he has none, a fact that only makes this tale more extraordinary. When Miss Templeton entered the room, shaking snow from her cloak, he stared at her with an intensity that several maids later described to me as the look of a man recognizing a ghost. I, for one, do not believe in ghosts. But I do believe in secrets, and the Duke has enough to bury a cathedral. Caroline curtsied. The Duke did not bow. He only observed, as though weighing something far more potent than a resume. "My lord," she said, voice small but steady, "I am here about the position of governess." And here, listeners, the scandal ignites. For his grace, without blinking, without softening, without a trace of embarrassment, replied, "I have no children." The housekeeper swears Caroline froze like a statue carved from ice. The steward swears the Duke's voice never wavered. I say the truth lies somewhere in between, for the air in that room had turned far too charged for calm denial or structured politeness. "No children," she repeated. "Then, why summon me?" He did not move, not a single elegant muscle, but his gaze sharpened like a man bracing for battle. "Because," he said, each word a quiet command, "the position I require you to fill is that of my wife." Ah, listeners, imagine the noise that erupted in the servants' hall when that tidbit was whispered. A few maids nearly fainted from delight. A footman dropped an entire tray of crystal. Even I, steady as my quill may be, felt my pulse flinch. Caroline Templeton, who had not eaten a proper dinner in 2 days, apparently forgot even the concept of breathing. Your wife?" she stammered. The Duke remained infuriatingly calm. Yes. That single word became the talk of London before midnight. Now, my listeners, let us be fair. It is one thing to seek employment. It is quite another, near madness even, to be informed that one has been summoned not for work, but for matrimony with a man whose boots are worth more than your annual income. And yet, Caroline did not faint. She did not scream. She did not even blush. "Miss Templeton," he said softly, "I ask you once more, will you accept the role?" She stood her ground, a remarkable feat, truly. Her chin lifted, her spine straightened. Poverty might have chased her through the snow, but pride carried her forward now. Ah, listeners, it appears this Christmas will not be merry at all, for the Duke did not even look at her at this point. At least, not yet. Tell me, dear listeners, what would you do if a Duke offered marriage before introductions were even complete? Part 2. What unfolded inside Caval House after the Duke's outrageous marriage proposal was chaos of the most delicious variety, chaos that I, through the lips of servants who gossip more eagerly than they breathe, now present to you. Let me take you inside. Not by trespass, of course, but by report. A lady such as I would never barge into a duke's private rooms. But I do have footmen who seem to float near keyholes, as though drawn to drama the way moths flutter toward flame. Miss Caroline Templeton did not swoon. She did not shriek. She did not even accept the nearest chair, though I am told her legs trembled with fatigue from the journey and the shock. Instead, the penniless governess planted her boots on the polished floor and declared, "I came to be employed, Your Grace, not purchased." Listeners, I felt a thrill along my spine when that line reached my ears. Such defiance, such spirit. It is the kind of courage I admire most. Quiet, razor-sharp, dangerous to men who believe the world bends for them. Duke Anthony Caval, however, is not accustomed to the world bending. He bends it. And yet, faced with this stubborn, cold-fingered governess, he faltered. According to Elias Pemberton, yes, that wonderfully observant footman of his, the Duke's jaw tightened. A dangerous sign. But instead of scolding, he replied in a tone so calm it nearly smoked with arrogance, "I do not purchase wives, Miss Templeton. I recruit what I require." She scoffed. The Duke arched a brow. A maid in the hallway bit her fist to keep from squealing. Then came the duel of tempers that now echoes through London drawing rooms like an early Christmas hymn. Caroline. You summoned me without children in your care. Unacceptable. Anthony. I summoned you because I require someone who will not collapse under pressure. Caroline. Pressure? From you? Anthony. Frequently. A footman carrying a wreath overheard this final remark and dropped the entire arrangement. Listeners, I am told pine needles are still being swept out of the carpet. The Duke turned, slowly, like a man attempting composure. You are impertinent. And you are spectacularly unreasonable, she shot back. Oh, how the staff struggled not to cheer. I confess, even I felt a stir of admiration for this governess. It is not often a woman stands toe-to-toe with a winter-forged duke and lives to tell it, much less sass him. Now the housekeeper, Constance Everhart, attempted to intervene, but the Duke silenced her with a look that could freeze steam. I will handle Miss Templeton directly. And handle her he tried. Walk with me, he commanded. She did not move. He blinked. She folded her arms. It is said that in that instant, the Duke understood the limits of his power for the first time. Only after she lifted her chin and declared, If you intend to employ me, Your Grace, I deserve to know the truth, did she finally, and very reluctantly, follow him down the hall. Naturally, I have not stepped foot beyond the threshold of Caval House in months. One must not expose oneself. After all. But the younger maids scurried after the pair and delivered their recollections to me before the candlelight faded. They say the Duke led Caroline through the mansion with clipped steps, his shoulders stiff beneath his immaculate winter coat. The corridors glittered with evergreen garlands, glowing candles, and polished baubles. Servants hung mistletoe as they passed, freezing mid-air when their master strode by. Caroline's eyes narrowed. "You claim to dislike Christmas," she said, "yet your home sparkles as though awaiting guests." His reply, "It is of no concern." "Ah, but it is of concern. For Christmas, dear listeners, is the Caval family's most painful season, a fact the Ton has long suspected but never confirmed. The governess was not fooled. "And the ballrooms?" she pressed, noting maids unfurling red ribbons across balustrades. "If no gathering is planned, why—" "Enough," he cut in, his tone clipped. "This is not the matter we must discuss." It was then he attempted what many men of power mistakenly believe to be a form of persuasion. He tried to correct her posture. "Yes, listeners." He reached out, placed his hands on her shoulders, and attempted to shift her stance. Caroline Templeton, who had braved employment offices, cramped attics, and the bitter judgment of London's matrons, did not appreciate being rearranged like furniture. She lifted both hands and corrected his posture instead. A maid swears the Duke's eyes widened a full fraction of an inch, an unprecedented display of emotion. "That," she said coolly, "is how one stands with dignity. Listeners, I nearly dropped my quill when that line was relayed to me." After this spectacle, he led her to his study, a magnificent room, though dimly lit, with an enormous oak desk cluttered with letters and unread correspondence. And there, beneath a ledger, Caroline spotted something peculiar, a sealed letter, unopened, bearing the Caval crest. The Duke moved swiftly to cover it. "Who is it from?" she asked. "No one." "A lie," whispered through clenched teeth. Her gaze then drifted to the corner, where the now infamous portrait, turned face down, lay half hidden in shadow. The Duchess that never was, perhaps? Or the woman who vanished from society years ago? She lifted the corner slightly, just enough to glimpse the frame. The Duke's reaction was immediate. "Do not touch that," he snapped, harsher than before. She withdrew her hand slowly, deliberately. "Your secrets are mounting, Your Grace." "And they are mine," he bit out. "Not yours." But oh, how wrong he is. Secrets have a habit of becoming everyone's business the moment they are hidden, particularly when a governess with sharp eyes begins to sniff them out. Listeners, when Caroline placed both hands on his desk and demanded to know his reasons once more, the Duke's tension shifted, not softened. No, he is made of sterner material than that, but cracked just enough to show something raw beneath. His answer, reluctant, quiet, almost guilty, was, "You walked through a storm to reach my door." Her reply, desperation, not destiny. Yet the moment held between them like a fragile truce. She needed employment. He needed a wife by Christmas. Pride warred with fear. Wit battled stubbornness. And in the middle of it all, something sparked. One of the kitchen maids later claimed she saw His Grace look at Caroline as though she were a puzzle piece stolen from his past. I do not know about stolen, but I sense she may be the one piece he never expected to find. Tell me, dear listeners, if a governess can bring a duke to heel with nothing but words, what more might she accomplish once their fates are entwined? Part 3. What occurred next inside that snow-lashed townhouse has already been whispered from drawing rooms to bakeries, from noble parlours to coachmen's benches, and every version reaches me, naturally, before the ink dries anywhere else. I was not in the study myself, of course. A lady of refinement does not linger in private rooms where proposals, scandalous or otherwise, fly like ill-aimed arrows. But the footmen who polish the Duke's candlesticks, the maids who glide in with warm coals, they have tongues looser than silk ribbon, and I, ever dutiful, receive every syllable. and so I know exactly how the storm inside the house became far more dangerous than the one raging outside. Caroline Templeton had just finished her brave standoff, her refusal to curtsy properly, her refusal to be intimidated, her refusal to obey, when the Duke stepped around his desk with the quiet force of a man making a decision no one else would dare consider. His voice, as reported by Elias Pemberton, was cold enough to frost glass. Miss Templeton, I leave for my ancestral estate tomorrow. I am expected to arrive with a wife. Listeners, I confess, my quill trembled at that line. Expected? By whom? For what purpose? He continued, without a wife, I risk forfeiting an inheritance that secures my estate. I cannot allow that. Caroline blinked at him with those storm-grey eyes that now torment half of London's bachelors. And what, she demanded, has that to do with me? Everything. Such arrogance, such breathtaking, icy certainty. Oh, how I understand why the servants lose their composure. But do not worry. Caroline was not so easily cowed. You do not know me, she repeated, voice sharper this time. Nor I you. I am not some necessary decoration. But that is precisely when His Grace made the situation far worse. He said, without flinching, without a hint of poetry. On the contrary, a wife is exactly that, a necessary decoration. Listeners, my word. I nearly snapped my quill in half. According to young Beatrice's lady's maid, who overheard through the cracked door, the governess's hand hovered over the nearest candlestick with a murderous intent, not entirely metaphorical. I cannot blame her. The Duke, though, remained steadfast. You have the correct face, he added. The correct bearing. You will do. You will do. Caroline Templeton, a governess barely warmed from the snowstorm, told she would simply do. Listeners, I hope you appreciate the restraint she exhibited by merely attempting to walk out rather than setting his study ablaze. She swept toward the door, chin lifted like a general marching into battle. The Duke did not move to stop her. Oh, no. He simply spoke, calm as a glacier. I will compensate you handsomely. That stopped her. Mid-stride, hand on the doorknob. I hear she inhaled sharply, pride tugging her one way, hunger tugging her another. Poverty is a cruel negotiator, and the Duke knew it. But this governess, let me assure you, is no meek creature to be bought with the first glint of gold. She turned back slowly. How handsomely? He named a sum. She nearly choked. Then, listeners, oh, savour this, they negotiated. A governess and a duke, over salary, travel, gowns, and even, prepare yourself, the right to speak her mind. She asked. He refused. She insisted. He surrendered. Elias Pemberton reports the Duke looked physically pained when he agreed. Speak freely, he muttered. Within reason? Within reason. Heavens, he has no idea what he has unleashed. But the true stir of intrigue arrived when a downstairs maid, sweet girl, prone to spilling tea, whispered that as Caroline marched triumphantly from the study, she passed the infamous face-down portrait again. Only, it had shifted. Not by accident, not by draught. Someone had touched it. And a servant, who shall remain unnamed for their own safety, uttered the phrase, after last year's Christmas disaster, I suppose anything is possible now. Christmas disaster. Shifted portrait. Unopened letter. A duke desperate enough to hire a stranger as a bride. My listeners, I smell a mystery more potent than brandied pudding. Before leaving the room, the Duke issued one final warning, one that several servants claim carried more weight than any marriage proposal. Do not speak of my family unless I choose to. A curious demand, is it not? Especially for a man in need of a wife. Caroline paused, studying him the way women study a riddle they intend to solve. Then, because her pride is as fierce as the storm outside, she extended her hand. "I accept your terms," she said, "but do not expect obedience, only partnership." The Duke did not smile, but his eyes, those Arctic blue eyes, shifted, just slightly, enough for every servant watching to gasp. And so, dear listeners, a governess signed a contract that afternoon, not for employment, but for matrimony. A union forged in desperation, a bargain soaked in tension, a Christmas journey destined for scandal. Part 4. I hardly know where to begin, for the next chapter of this unfolding scandal swept me along so thoroughly that even I, experienced observer of every folly and flirtation in the ton, found myself clutching my cloak like a debutante reading her first Gothic novel. The morning after the governess accepted the Duke's outrageous terms, Caval House erupted into preparations so frantic that several servants undoubtedly earned themselves early graves. I did not see the commotion with my own eyes, of course. I remain far too sophisticated for such intrusion. But the coachman who polished the ducal carriage told me every last detail with breathless pride. The Duke and the governess were to depart for the Caval ancestral estate, northward, in a blizzard, with a contract between them so thin and combustible that even the carriage lanterns seemed afraid to burn near it. I followed discreetly, never at their heels, mind you, but always close enough to hear the whispers of innkeepers, carriage boys, and those talkative matrons whose tongues wag faster than their knitting needles. And listeners, what a journey it was. From the moment Caroline Templeton set foot into the carriage, she refused, absolutely refused, to sit silently like the obedient ornament the Duke clearly expected. No, she settled across from him with her chin high, her wavy chestnut hair spilling rebelliously from her bonnet, and regarded him with the politeness of a woman about to critique a work of art she finds profoundly disappointing. "You are staring," she told him. "I am observing," he returned stiffly. "To what end?" "Assessment." "My condolences," she muttered. Listeners, I nearly fell out of my own carriage when that quote reached my ears. And thus began the journey. Two stubborn flames glaring at one another across polished wood panels, their breath fogging the chilled air. Their silence broken only by Caroline's relentless critiques. "Your shoulders are too tense," she said at one point. "I am a duke," he answered. "My shoulders are exactly as they should be." "And your brooding," she added, "is excessive." "I do not brood." "You brood so loudly I can practically hear it." The coachman nearly toppled from his seat from suppressed laughter. I, too, would have cackled had I been less dignified. When they stopped at the first inn, oh, what a spectacle that was. The innkeeper, a portly man with cheeks like roasted apples and a grin too wide for propriety, took one look at the pair and announced, "A honeymooning couple. Very well. Our romantic suite is at your disposal." The Duke froze, absolutely petrified. Caroline turned scarlet, then deathly pale, then scarlet again. And the innkeeper, poor deluded creature, refused to listen to their protests, insisting that no couple so handsomely matched could possibly wish to sleep apart on such a frigid night. I was told the Duke nearly self-combusted from mortification. A footman who witnessed the scene claimed His Grace stared at the inn's floral wallpaper like a man praying for divine intervention. "How?" he muttered. "Has this become my life?" Caroline, to her credit, simply said, "Perhaps, Your Grace, if you glowered less, people would misinterpret us less." He stared at her for a long moment. "I do not glower," he insisted. "You do," she replied, religiously. It was then, somewhere between the innkeeper's wink and Caroline's exasperated sigh, that I sensed the shift, the beginning of trouble, the beginning of something else entirely. For throughout the remainder of their journey, His Grace's eyes, cold blue, watchful, began to soften despite himself. And Caroline, stubborn creature that she is, began noticing things she pretended not to see. The Duke lifting a fallen child from a snowbank outside a coaching inn, brushing the snow from the boy's hair with a gentleness that contradicted every rumour about him. The way he paused when distant church bells chimed through the frosted air, his expression tightening like a wound reopening. The way he held the carriage door for her when the ground turned slick. Though she promptly slipped regardless and pulled him straight down with her, sending both sprawling into the snow in an inelegant heap. Listeners, I laughed so violently upon hearing that particular anecdote that I spilled ink on my new gloves. But the moment that tugged at even my seasoned heartstrings came later, as the pair dined in the common room of a rural inn. The fire crackled behind them. Garlands hung from the beams. Children, sticky, jubilant, darted between tables with wooden toys. Caroline smiled at them. The Duke noticed. And for a heartbeat, just one, he let himself smile too, only for it to vanish the moment he became aware of it. And here, my listeners, comes the whisper that set my quill aflame. Two travellers seated nearby were overheard murmuring about his grace. He once broke a woman's heart on Christmas Eve, one whispered. Terrible business, said the other. Never been the same since. Caroline stilled. The Duke stiffened. Something cold flickered in his eyes. A shadow. A memory? A wound. And when the bells from the village church tolled again, their soft notes carrying through the snowy dusk, he flinched, barely, but enough for Caroline, and for every watching servant, to notice. He stared into the whirling snow beyond the tavern window like a man expecting a ghost, or fearing one. And because I know my listeners as well as I know myself, I can already feel your questions rising like breath on winter air. Who was the woman? What happened that Christmas Eve? And why does the Duke of Caval look toward the snow as though it holds the answer? Oh, dearest listeners, if you believe the journey northward held scandal, tension, and disorder, wait until you see what awaits them at Caval Estate. For the past has a way of waiting under drifts of snow, silent, patient, and ready to strike. And I, naturally, shall be there, pen poised, when it does. Part 5. I must confess that even my seasoned quill trembles as I write this portion of our tale. For while I have witnessed scandals of every variety, runaway brides, stolen debuts, clandestine courtships conducted behind potted palms, none have struck me with the peculiar mixture of dread and delight that awaited the Duke and his newly contracted companion upon their arrival at Caval Estate. Oh, I was not present inside those hallowed, frost-bitten walls. I dare not stroll uninvited into the private chambers of ducal residences. But I know the estate as well as any Londoner knows disappointment. And I have on excellent authority, from valets whose chatter could fill a year's worth of my papers, that the home welcomed the pair with a silence so rigid it could have snapped beneath its own pride. The Caval ancestral estate rose from the winter landscape like a memory refusing to die. Snow perched upon its parapets. Bare vines clung to its stone like frozen veins. And every window flickered with candlelight that looked more ceremonial than warm. I felt the tension of that household the moment my own coach wheels met their gravel drive. Gossip travels quickly when the air itself seems to shiver with secrets. The Duke, I am told, stepped through the great doors with the composure of a man walking into battle. Anthony Caval carries dignity the way knights carry shields, high, silent, unbending. Yet even he could not stop the barrage of family stares that awaited him in the entrance hall. Aunt Florence swooned on sight. I heard from a maid that she declared she required reviving salts, a sofa, and perhaps a new nephew altogether. Uncle Lawrence clasped Anthony's hand with the solemnity of a bishop greeting a ghost. Beatrice, sweet little angel-faced Beatrice, stared between the Duke and Caroline as though witnessing an illicit play brought to life. But the whispers, oh, listeners, the whispers gave me life. Who is she? She looks far too young to be a duchess. Did he bring her home for Christmas? She is too pretty to be someone's mere acquaintance. She is too outspoken, too confident, too everything. He has not brought a woman home in years. Why her? Do not tell me he intends to wed a stranger. I sat with the servants while these murmurs drifted down the staircases like chimney soot. They did not notice me, or pretended not to notice. I have a talent for fading into wallpaper whenever truth is near. Caroline Templeton, for her part, accepted the household's shock with the stubborn grace of a woman who has survived far worse than judgmental aunties. She wandered through the grand corridors with careful steps, taking in the portraits, the chandeliers, the garlands hanging heavy with evergreen scent. Servants later informed me she held her chin high, even when she passed the turned-down portrait once more, its painted face hidden against the wall as though ashamed. Then came the library. Ah, the Caval library. I know it well. Its fireplace crackles perpetually, its velvet drapes swallow sound, and its shadows cling to the edges of the room like old regrets. It was there that Caroline found it. The letter. One must imagine the governess drifting between shelves, running her fingers along the spines of books older than her entire lineage. The room was cold. The estate's hearths never quite banish the winter air, no matter how fiercely they burn. She reached for a volume on a high shelf, and something slipped behind it. A folded paper, sealed once, but now cracked with age. A crest glimmered faintly on its front. The same crest, listeners, that she had seen earlier on the Duke's desk in London. The report came to me from a footman who had been dusting in the adjoining corridor. Bless these servants and their loose tongues. Caroline, driven by curiosity as sharp as any noblewoman's ambition, opened the letter carefully, as though it might crumble into dust. But it did not crumble. It revealed. It revealed the story that had haunted the Caval house for years. The rumour that Anthony Caval once eloped with a woman beneath his station. The scandal that tore him from his family. The humiliation that struck on Christmas Eve, of all nights, and left him cloaked in wounded pride rather than holiday warmth. I imagine Caroline's expression shifting with every line she read. Surprise first, then disbelief, then something softer, more dangerous, understanding. For the letter suggested things far worse than youthful rebellion. It hinted at deceit, at a woman who vanished conveniently after the rumour broke, at a family too ready to believe that their heir had shamed them without bothering to hear his defence. It was proof, listeners, that the Duke's heart had once been weaponized, and Caroline, the poor creature, held that truth in her hands just as footsteps echoed behind her. She dropped the letter. The sound, I am told, was shockingly loud in that cavernous room. Anthony Caval entered the doorway like a storm given human form, tall, silent, tense. Caroline froze. He froze. The letter lay exposed between them like a wound reopened. I would have given 10 years of my life to witness the expressions that crossed their faces. Fear, shame, anger, something unspoken that stretched taut as a violin string. From the crack in the corridor, a servant, one with more courage than sense, peeked in and saw everything. That is how the story reached me, in whispers, trembling with excitement, relayed through a chain of maids, footmen, and kitchen girls until it landed in my waiting hands like fresh snow. Anthony's voice, it seems, was a blade dipped in frost. Caroline's was a shield held steady, but neither of them noticed the other presence. A shadow lingering just beyond the doorway, watching. And another relative, Beatrice, if the gossip is to be believed, caught smiling far too knowingly, as if she recognized a drama she had seen before and could already sense its conclusion. So many questions bloom from this moment. Who hid the letter in the first place? Why was the woman's disappearance never properly examined? And most perilous of all, was the Duke betrayed by someone closer than any lover? Oh, listeners, the frost at Caval Estate is nothing compared to the chill that hangs over that secret, and I assure you, the next strike of truth will not be gentle. For in that library, amidst dust and shadows, a governess learned more about a duke's past than any woman has dared uncover. And now the household waits to see whether she will become its salvation or its undoing. If this little twist has set your heart racing as fiercely as mine, do consider subscribing and leave your thoughts in the comment section, for I am simply dying to read them. Part 6. What unfolded in the grand ballroom last night was nothing short of a reckoning, a confession, a wound torn open beneath a sprig of Christmas mischief. And I say this with no exaggeration. I have never felt more entangled, more breathless, or more hopelessly invested in a scandal. I was not in the ballroom itself. Of course not. I value my life far too dearly to wander into the lion's den. But the servants who witnessed the event carried their trembling accounts straight to me, breathless from the drama, cheeks pink from the winter air, and hands pressed to their hearts as though the truth had seared them. And what a truth it was. It began with raised voices, echoing through the decorated corridors like a duet of wounded pride and injured hope. The Duke and his governess, his supposed fiancée for the benefit of Christmas appearances, had entered the grand ballroom alone. The family lingered just beyond the archway, peering in with shameless fascination. I know this because one maid, who claims to have been guarding a tray of candied almonds nearby, recounted every detail with the urgency of a woman reporting a battlefield. The ballroom, she said, glowed with candlelight and garlands and polished floors reflecting the frost-glittered windows. Snow drifted outside like fallen feathers. But within those glowing walls, fire. "You had no right to go through my things," the Duke growled, his voice a low, wounded whip. "And you had no right to summon me under false pretenses," Miss Caroline retorted, chin high, eyes bright. Not with fear, but with indignation. I felt my heart skip, listeners. I know righteous fury when I hear it described, and hers sounded magnificent. The Duke, Anthony Caval, a man sculpted from frost and unspoken sorrows, stood rigid beneath the candlelight, his jaw locked. Miss Caroline faced him with the steady fire of a woman who had endured far too much to be cowed now. "You owe me the truth," she insisted. "You owe yourself the truth." The servants, watching from behind pillars, held their breath. Even through second-hand whispers, I felt my pulse quicken. I know the sound of a heart on the verge of breaking. It is the same silence that falls before a carriage wheel shatters on ice. Terrifying, delicate, inevitable. And then he cracked. I am told his shoulders sagged just slightly, as though the weight of every Christmas past had fallen upon him at once. His voice, when he spoke, was no longer sharp, but stripped bare. "I never eloped," he said. The words struck the room like a blow. "I never loved the woman they named. I never betrayed my family. They simply believed I had. They believed it instantly." Oh, listeners. Even from a distance, I felt the ice around his heart begin to splinter. Snow drifted heavily against the great windows as he spoke, each flake a silent witness to the unraveling of a decade-old wound. "The rumor destroyed me," he admitted, "not because of disgrace, but because it showed me what my family truly thought of me. They did not even ask for my side." His throat tightened. Servants swear his hands trembled. Christmas became nothing but the memory of that humiliation. And Miss Caroline? She softened, not with pity. Oh no, she is far too proud for that. But with understanding. A woman shaped by hardship recognizes suffering in others with a clarity even love envies. "You have spent years wearing your pride like armor," she whispered. "But pride is just another word for fear." Listeners. I swooned, truly swooned. I clutched my fan and had to remind myself that fainting is unbecoming for a writer of my reputation. The Duke inhaled sharply. She had struck the truth so precisely it seemed to ring through the ballroom like a bell. And then, the moment that sent half the household scattering in excitement, they found themselves beneath a sprig of mistletoe. The mistletoe, according to a footman who nearly dropped a tray of punch in his excitement, hung directly above them like a mischievous omen. Candlelight gilded Miss Caroline's hair. The Duke's expression softened so subtly that even the servants dared not breathe. He stepped closer. She looked up. Time paused. Even now, as I write, I feel my pulse fluttering. I imagine Anthony Caval, cold, immaculate, feared, looking not at a governess, but at a woman who had cracked open his silence. Their faces neared. The air changed. Every servant peering in from the hallway swore the moment felt fragile enough to shatter at the faintest sound. And shatter it did. A squeal, from Beatrice, naturally, shot through the archway, breaking the spell. The Duke stepped back, pride slamming its door shut. Miss Caroline retreated a pace as well, perhaps out of fear that desire could complicate her already impossible position. But the universe was not finished. For just as the moment dissolved, there came a knock, sharp, frantic, urgent, and footsteps heard fading away. Just then, a note was seen, on the floor. Caroline picks it up and reads it out. There's more to the story, but it's not my place. Oh, listeners, do you feel it? The shift? The pull? The tantalizing promise that the truth is not merely painful, but incomplete. For if there is one thing I know in this world, one certainty about scandal, it is that the first confession is never the last. The Duke has revealed his wound. The governess has seen the man beneath the frost. And now the estate trembles with a truth still hiding, waiting, watching. I, Lady Whistledown, feel it in my bones. This tale is far from finished. The next revelation will not whisper. It will roar. My dearest listeners, if you find your own heart stirred by this confession as deeply as mine, do be kind enough to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comment section below. Part 7. What I am about to reveal did not simply flutter into my hands like common gossip. No, it descended upon me like a blizzard of truth, carried by 3 maids, 1 footman, an elderly gardener with frost-bitten ears, and a scandalized cook who swore upon her own rolling pin that every word was real. Let us begin where the storm inside Caval estate last left us, with a governess bold enough to stare down a duke, wise enough to read the cracks in his armour, and reckless enough to go hunting through a family's Christmas ghosts. I was not present myself, naturally. I value my face too much to subject it to the frost dripping from those ancestral ceilings. But my little birds, bless their wagging tongues, brought me every detail as though I had been hiding behind the very curtains of the east corridor. And oh, what a treasure trove they laid before me. It began at dawn, when the governess rose before the household had even stirred, her boots barely whispering along the carpeted halls. I know this because Constance Everhart, the fearsome housekeeper, witnessed her sneaking past and muttered to a maid behind her fan that a woman who wakes before her employer is either admirable or dangerous. I suspect she is both. The governess began her investigation with perfect subtlety, if one ignores the fact that she interrogated the staff with all the finesse of a general at war. She cornered Elias Pemberton near the staircase, demanding to know whether last Christmas's scandal was truly as dreadful as whispered. Elias, loyal creature that he is, refused to speak, but his eyes, according to a footman who watched from the gallery, betrayed something heavy, something aching, something like guilt. And so, she pressed on. She questioned the scullery maids dusting the corridors. She inquired after the origin of the half-burned Christmas cards tucked into drawers. She even coaxed information from a timid hall boy who had overheard the Duke arguing with Reginald Caval in the conservatory last night. But the elderly aunt, Florence Denholm, was the true victory. Aunt Florence, I am told, guards family secrets as fiercely as she guards her gingerbread tin. And indeed, when the governess approached her, the woman clutched the tin to her chest as though protecting royal jewels. "Why ask?" Aunt Florence demanded, crumbs dusting her bodice. "Because someone ruined the Duke," the governess replied, voice firm. "And I intend to know who." Listeners, I confess, I nearly swooned when this line reached me. I am not accustomed to heroines with such spine, such courage, such willingness to court scandal with bare hands. But it was the gingerbread that conquered the aunt. When the governess slid a warm piece across the table, do not ask how she procured it. I am told the kitchen staff are all secretly in love with her. The aunt's resolve melted faster than snow on a hearthstone. From that trembling, sugar-dusted confession came the first thread of truth. "The letters did not look right," Aunt Florence murmured. "Not like the woman's true hand. Handwriting forgery. Imagine my delight. Oh, listeners, my heart soared. For all these years I believed the elopement rumor nothing more than a foolish tale born of winter boredom. But now I smelled orchestration, scheming, a scandal crafted with intention. The governess pressed on, one whisper to another, one secret nudged open like a stubborn door in a draughty hall. From Beatrice Caval, who cannot help but gossip as naturally as birds sing, came an even more delicious fragment. She had once seen Reginald Caval slipping through the study late on Christmas Eve, clutching a bundle of papers with the same crest that appeared on the letters. Reginald, the cousin with a smile as thin as a blade and ambition thicker than clotted cream. I must admit, listeners, when this piece of information fluttered into my hands, I felt a thrill so sharp I had to steady myself against my writing desk. I have long suspected that Reginald's elegance was little more than a mask, and the governess, with her keen instincts, saw straight through it. And still she dug deeper. She wandered the estate like a ghost of Christmas righteousness, slipping into parlours, ballrooms, and the old card room where secrets cling to wood like perfume. She found letters out of order, Christmas ribbons knotted where they ought not be. She noticed that one portrait, turned down when she first arrived, had been moved again. But the true jewel of discovery came from Lawrence Blythe, the estate steward, a man of stoic bearing, who rarely admits anything unless forced by fire or famine. According to a maid who overheard them, the governess approached him during a moment of uncharacteristic weakness when he stared too long into the great hearth, his face ghost-lit and weary. "Tell me," she said softly. "Someone benefited from the Duke's disgrace. Who was it?" Lawrence tightened, went still, and for a heartbeat, the room held its breath. "There was someone," he whispered, "but I cannot—" He was interrupted by a crash, papers tumbling, a gasp, not from the governess, but from someone in the adjoining corridor. A family member, shadowed, silent, was burning documents in the hearth. By the time she reached them, only ashes remained. Listeners, I tell you this with trembling excitement. I believe this single moment has shifted the very ground beneath Caval Estate. Someone is cornered. Someone is afraid. Someone thought the governess too insignificant to notice the trail of lies. How wrong they were. For I, Lady Whistledown, have never seen a woman peel back a family's secrets with such precision, and each truth she uncovers only sharpens the next. The elopement rumor was not simply a misunderstanding. It was a weapon crafted by a hand close enough to the Duke to strike without suspicion. And now that hand is trembling. I see it, listeners. I feel it in every whisper that reaches my ears. A reckoning approaches. And when it comes, oh, how London shall gasp. If the Duke has survived humiliation, betrayal, and a Christmas Eve ruin engineered against him, then what remains for him to lose or gain? For the governess, I suspect, is becoming far more than a contracted wife. She is becoming the one person willing to stand in the line of fire for him, and that is a scandal greater than any forged letter. Stay close, listeners. The next truth will not merely emerge, it will explode. Part 8. I, Lady Whistledown, have reported scandals of every flavour. Elopements gone awry, duels over mistaken affections, and even that regrettable incident involving Lady Fairborn's parrot and the Earl of Montmere's wig. But what I learned tonight, within the cavernous halls of Caval estate, left even me shaken, my quill trembling with the kind of thrill one seldom finds outside of Christmas Eve itself. I was not present in the Great Hall, of course. My complexion is far too delicate for the northern chill, and besides, I had no desire to be trampled by Caval relatives stampeding toward drama like hounds on a scent. But my dear network, those loyal servants with ears sharper than sleigh bells, sent every detail flying straight to my eager hands. And listeners, what a spectacle it was. The truth did not emerge gently. It erupted. The great hall was ablaze with Christmas splendor. Towering garlands draped over marble pillars, candles flickering like watchful eyes, the scent of evergreens thick enough to intoxicate. But beneath the festive facade lay tension so sharp it could have sliced the ribbons on every wreath. The governess, Caroline Templeton, a woman I am beginning to admire more than is strictly proper, stood at the center of the hall with the air of one who has stopped running from fear. She held a bundle of crinkled letters in her gloved hands. According to a footman who practically sprinted to bring me the news, her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding hard enough to shake the holly boughs. "Someone forged these," she announced. Oh, listeners, how I wish I could have seen the uproar with my own eyes. A dozen Caval aunties nearly collapsed into their petticoats. Beatrice let out a gasp loud enough to echo. Even Constance Everhart's stern expression wavered. A rare miracle. And then, like a storm gathering itself, the Duke stepped forward. Anthony Caval, tall, controlled, winter carved into human form, looked at the letters as though they were ghosts risen from their graves. My sources tell me he said nothing at first. Absolutely nothing. But the silence was worse than any shout. It revealed more heartbreak than 100 confessions. The poor man has worn pride as armor for so long that the mere sight of the old lies broke something in him. The governess lifted her chin. "These letters were never written by the woman you were accused of loving," she declared. "Her handwriting is nothing like this." Waves of gasps, a few shrieks. Someone, Aunt Florence, undoubtedly, demanded gingerbread to steady her nerves. But the true shock was yet to come. For from behind the Christmas tree, and I swear this is exactly what the footman said, Reginald Caval emerged like a fox slinking out from stolen hen feathers. Reginald, with his golden brown hair perfectly arranged, his smile thin and venomous, his coat embroidered with just enough gold to conceal insecurity. Reginald, who once suffered the indignity of losing land to his illustrious cousin. Reginald, who had everything to gain from Anthony Caval becoming a disgraced recluse. The governess looked straight at him. "You spread the rumor," she said. "You forged the letters. You told the family he had eloped." Listeners, I nearly dropped my teacup when this line reached me. Anthony's entire family froze. Even the Garlands seemed to wilt in disbelief. A maid reported to me that the Duke's face went utterly still, like the lake outside the estate, frozen to lethal perfection. Reginald scoffed, naturally. Men who lie for sport always scoff first. But his eyes darted, a flicker that my servants are trained to notice. "You destroyed him," Caroline continued, each word a blow. "You made certain the rumor broke on Christmas Eve when the family was gathered, when the sting would last forever." Caroline lifted the forged letters, her voice steady as the gathered family leaned in. These were not difficult to trace, she said. The crest stamped upon them matches the one carved into Reginald's own writing desk, a detail no one had ever thought to question. Every servant who dared whisper of the Christmas disaster spoke his name with the same nervous certainty. And in the hearth, I found the remains of Caval stationery burned in haste, marked in the distinctive ink only he uses. The evidence pointed in one direction alone. And when Reginald's face blanched, his composure cracking like thin ice, she added the final blow. Your panic confirms what the clues have already proven. At first, Reginald held himself with that infuriating, glacial composure of his, the sort that always made me, and every sensible woman in London, long to throw a candlestick at his head. He denied Caroline's accusation with a soft, cultured laugh, as if the entire assembly were children misinterpreting a parlour game. But when she pointed directly at him, chin lifted, eyes blazing, her voice steady as a drawn blade, something in Reginald's elegant facade cracked. Anthony murmured one low word, envy, and that was quite enough. Reginald exploded. Rage poured out in a torrent he had spent years sealing beneath silk and courtesy. He shouted that Anthony had always been the favoured heir, the beloved son, the one destined to inherit everything, while he, Reginald, was expected to smile and applaud from the shadows. He raved that the estate should have been his, that Anthony wasted opportunities, that the family needed a sharper mind than a sentimental heir. And in his fury, he revealed far more than he meant to. The forged letters, the planted rumours, the Christmas Eve timing meant to wound deepest. By the time silence returned, his own tongue had destroyed him more thoroughly than any evidence ever could. Aunt Florence fainted then, for real this time, and was caught by Lawrence Blythe, whose grim expression told every truth Caroline had yet to speak. Reginald, in a single unravelling breath, exposed himself. He ranted. He sputtered. He admitted that he forged the letters, only the first ones, and that he merely nudged the family into believing the Duke had disgraced them. Listeners, if I had been present, I would have applauded. Caroline Templeton did not simply reveal a lie. She unspooled an entire tapestry of betrayal, and the Duke, oh, how my heart aches for him, let the truth wash over his features. The servants described it as witnessing the thawing of a glacier, first the crack, then the fracture, then the torrent. He looked at Caroline, really looked at her, and then he spoke, his voice carrying through the hall like a tolling bell. I returned home only because of her, he said, because she saw what none of you did, because she stood beside me when I had given her no reason to. According to my source hiding behind a pillar, Caroline turned crimson. And listeners, I do not blame her. A duke, declaring even a sliver of affection in front of his entire family, may as well be proposing marriage beneath a cathedral arch. The family erupted. Some protested, some wept. Beatrice declared her support so loudly she nearly knocked over a candelabra. Florence demanded someone fetch Reginald by the ear. Even Juliana Fairborn appeared stunned into silence. But the Duke, he did not look at any of them. He looked only at the governess. And for the first time in many years, Anthony Caval no longer seemed made of frost and duty, but of something warmer, something dangerously close to tenderness. The scandal had been exposed, the cousin unmasked, the Duke vindicated. Yet the hall buzzed with a new question. One I, too, whispered to myself when the footman finished recounting everything. Now that his name is restored, what will the Duke do with the woman who saved him? Listeners, I suspect the next revelation will set the entire ton ablaze, and I, Lady Whistledown, shall be waiting with quill poised. Part 9. Dearest listeners, I must confess something most unbecoming for a woman who has witnessed every flavour of scandal from Mayfair to the moors of Scotland. I thought I had grown impossible to surprise. Yet here I sit, quill trembling above parchment, heart drumming with delight. for the events of this evening at Caval Estate have upended even my well-trained expectations. I was not in the drawing room when the Duke pulled Miss Caroline Templeton aside. I am far too clever to linger openly where prying eyes might accuse me of eavesdropping. But the corridor outside that velvet-curtained alcove— well, let us simply say that servants carrying wine do not always carry discretion with equal steadiness. And so, through a cascade of whispers, a footman's hurried retelling, a maid's breathless embellishment, a coachman's shock that he dared share with me the moment he brought fresh logs inside, I have gathered every detail. And listeners, it is glorious. The Caval family, still reeling from the exposure of Reginald Caval's treachery, had scattered into small, gossiping clusters near the hearth. Florence Denholm demanded brandy strong enough to revive a corpse, while young Beatrice fluttered about, asking every servant if they believed true love could strike like lightning. The entire estate vibrated with restored pride and the intoxicating scent of vindication. But the Duke— oh, he moved through the room with a different energy entirely, no longer the cold marble figure he had been upon his arrival. Something had cracked or softened within him. He approached Caroline in silence. A maid polishing silver nearby swore to me that his expression held the wary reverence of a man standing before a miracle he did not earn. "Walk with me," he said to her. And with that single, deceptively simple sentence, he led her out of the hall and into a quiet alcove lit only by candles and the glow of drifting snow through tall windows. The family watched them go. Oh yes, they watched. Some with hope, others with curiosity, and a few with the kind of hunger only fresh scandal can feed. But I, through my faithful messengers, received what the family could not hear: the truth. According to the maid who lingered too long while collecting empty teacups, the Duke stood before Caroline with uncharacteristic hesitation. The proud, icy lord of Caval Estate looked, for the first time in years, entirely human. "Miss Templeton," he began, voice low and controlled, "our arrangement was meant to be temporary." Caroline, bold creature that she is, folded her arms. "I am aware," she replied. Footmen later admitted to me that she spoke with all the dignity of a queen refusing lesser terms. How I adore that governess. The Duke continued, more quietly still. "And yet, I find I cannot imagine returning to life before you arrived." Listeners, I nearly fanned myself upon hearing this. The man says little, but when he does, every syllable lands like a dropped jewel. He confessed, haltingly, awkwardly, that she had become more than an obligation, more than a shield against familial demands. She had become the spark that pulled him out of years of bitterness and isolation. Their conflict, their sparring, even her insistence on negotiating every term, it had all forced him to feel again. But Caroline did not melt instantly. How could she? She has spent years surviving disappointment, learning to trust only what is proven. "You hired me," she said softly, "for convenience." "I did," he admitted, "and it was the greatest mistake I have ever made." He stepped closer. "I do not wish for convenience any more." According to the housemaid who relayed this part with flushed cheeks, Caroline stared at him with wide, astonished eyes, as though she had never expected tenderness to be offered to her, especially by a duke whose world had been carved from cold expectations. "And what do you wish for now?" she whispered. The Duke's answer, as told to me by no fewer than 3 trembling footmen: "You. Not the contract, not the facade. Not the role she reluctantly agreed to play. Her." He reached for her hand. She did not pull away. But she did not surrender it easily either. She is stubborn, listeners, and I admire her all the more for it. "I need to hear you ask plainly," she said, "without contracts, without necessity, without pride." Ah, how she dismantles him, gracefully, fearlessly. The Duke bowed his head, the gesture of a man relinquishing armour he has worn too long, and asked again, voice steady, "Caroline Templeton, will you be my wife?" The maid who witnessed this was reportedly so moved, she nearly forgot she was hiding behind a column. Caroline's answer came slowly, as though her heart fought to be cautious and hopeful at once. "Yes," she breathed, "but ask me again." And the Duke, this formerly stoic, wounded man, laughed. A sound so rare the servants later swore the candles flickered in joy. And he did ask again, with less formality, more warmth, with less fear, more certainty. Caroline accepted. The moment sealed itself in the stillness between them, a quiet intimacy, the kind that draws two souls closer without a touch that would scandalize society, the kind that YouTube would approve and I would cherish. Outside, snow began to fall in soft, delicate flurries. Church bells chimed somewhere in the distance, their music drifting through stone walls like a blessing. Inside the hall, the watching family burst into whispers and sighs and shameless swooning. And at last, with every grievance resolved, every secret unearthed, and every wounded heart finally stitched with hope, the Duke and his governess, turned bride, stepped forward into the glow of Caval estate, hand in hand. There was no pretense now, no contract, no masquerade of duty, only the unmistakable look of two souls choosing one another freely, boldly, beautifully. As for me, I closed my notebook with a gentle snap, warmed by a kind of affection I seldom allow myself. For once, the ton need not brace for another scandal. Tonight, just this once, love won so thoroughly that even I, Lady Whistledown, can find no sharper ending than this. They were happy. And London whispered blessings instead of gossip. If this tale warmed your heart as keenly as it did mine, do remember to like, share, and subscribe for more whispered scandals yet to come.